Welcome. This is Charlie from Common Sense News with a new video. This time I will be informing you about Cair, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, where I will go over the background on this organization, as well as if they are tied to terrorists. So why am I doing this? Because our mainstream media fails to cover controversial issues when it comes to Muslims and the religion of Islam. I hope you enjoy this video and learn something at the same time. Let's go ahead and get started. There are many important issues happening right now that Americans need to pay attention to. And at the top of the list is Islamic extremists working on invading our culture, trying to replace it with Islamic culture and rules. What specifically am I referring to? There is a significant movement in the U.S. that is gaining attention but lacks action. What is this movement about? Muslim extremists are actively pursuing a religious takeover of the Western world, including our country. These extremists are working hard to spread Islam within our borders. And it's important to note that this effort to promote Islam is not inherently wrong, and it is no different from attempts to convert Muslims to Christianity. But the end result is not going to be acceptable for Americans because of many reasons, and all you have to do is look at Iran and how they treat those who don't follow Scripture. One important point that seems to be missed by everyone is that Islam has a goal of world domination, just like any religion. Spreading the word. The big difference is the means to an end, which for Islamic extremists usually results in forced adherence to Scripture from the Quran, and those who don't follow are dealt with harshly. There are extremist religious leaders in all the countries in the Middle East, but the most extreme are in Iran and any country they support. However, that doesn't mean we need to ignore the Muslims who are extremists using peaceful methods to infiltrate and then convert, and that is happening here in the good old USA. Our country is not ready for this, especially after looking at the impacts in Europe, where nations are being overrun by Muslims with Islamic laws taking precedence over the man-made laws in many cases, which our country will not accept. But the extremists keep trying to break the ice. At some point in time in the future, there will be violence in our own homeland, because Islam does not believe in the separation of church and state, and they will fight against our culture as it is in Europe today. The religious extremists believe that Islam is the only true religion, and that it is to be led by their spiritual leaders, such as imams, sheikhs, muftis, and mullahs. Of special interest are countries where extremists are consolidated, such as in Iran and Afghanistan, to name a few. And of course, there are many proxies as well. These countries are run by the spiritual leader who has the final say on all matters. It is religion first, government, and people next. The biggest story to be told about our future well-being is the immigration of Muslims who do not assimilate, and we are not even reporting on the subject. You might label me a conspiracist or think I'm crazy, and that's completely fine. However, I encourage you to do your own research, as the media often overlooks this topic. Or take a look at international news to see how Europe's globalization is going. Not so good, so we should learn from their mistakes, and Trump is on the right track. One more important point I want to emphasize, which I've mentioned in my previous videos about Islam. Please do not, and let me repeat that, do not lump all Muslims into a terrorist category, because that would be a false assumption and a disservice to Muslims and many others as well. All religions have their good and bad moments, so Islam is not alone on this subject. Okay, on to the discussion concerning the Council on American-Islamic Relations, also known as Cair. This group was founded in 1994 as a non-profit organization to spread an understanding of Islam to all of us who are clueless, and that is most Americans. But we need to understand that the final goal of extremist Islam is the conversion of the infidels, which is us. So, let's discuss the nonprofit group Cair. This is a well-meaning organization dedicated to supporting Muslim Americans, particularly when they face discrimination. Additionally, immigrant Muslims are educated about their legal rights to help them navigate a range of issues in their daily lives. CARE also encourages Muslims to aspire to enter politics, to represent their communities. Looking ahead, I can envision the possibility of a Muslim political party if current growth trends continue, influenced by both immigration and higher birth rates among Muslims. While this organization represents a worthy nonprofit cause, it is essential to monitor its activities, as extremists may operate quietly and go unnoticed. Therefore, it is essential to monitor their actions and funding sources. CARE also provides information to schools and organizations for them to spread the word of Islam and the Muslim culture, which is a good thing because Americans are generally clueless about Islam, and it is better to get the truth out rather than have stereotypes grow. However, one big question about this non-profit organization is the rumors of ties to Islamic extremist groups, something our government should be concerned about. I previously researched the Muslim Brotherhood, a questionable group with ties to multiple extremist groups, but they have the same peaceful goals as CARE. However, some countries have recognized and already designated this group as a terrorist group because of its ties to extremist groups. At the same time, in the U.S., we continue to engage in political debates over whether it should be classified as such, when there is no doubt that the Muslim Brotherhood supports Islamic extremist groups. A key point is that the Western perception of a terrorist is not the same as that of Muslims, and that is a big issue that may never be solved. In the end, Muslims are guided by Islam first over everything else. Trump should designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group, and that is currently on the table. It would be wrong not to make this designation. Additionally, there are close ties between the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CARE, and the Muslim Brotherhood, and our intelligence agencies must closely monitor these associations for any potential terrorist activities. This is a sad but true reality. Before I proceed, I want to emphasize that Islam is central to the lives of all Muslims, and it is a calling and influences everything they do. But unlike Christianity, Islam is on steroids. In Muslim countries, children grow up immersed in Islamic teachings from birth until death, with these teachings often regarded as more important than basic subjects like reading, writing, and arithmetic. In Iran, children go to schools and do nothing but memorize the Quran because that is the guide to everything they do. If you haven't got the picture yet, Islam rules the day with standard education lacking, as well as no awareness of the world around them in many extremist Islamic nations. There are many Muslims who still live in secluded areas with no technology, which most Americans are unaware of. They basically live in another world apart from the rest of the Muslims and us as well. Anyone who has served in the Middle East can confirm this, as many people in those regions have little awareness of the world outside their communities. When 911 was mentioned by GIs out in the field, to their surprise, most of the Muslims they encountered had no idea. Now that is out of touch in today's world. Most Muslims in Islamic extremist nations are poor and have no access to technology, as I mentioned. Of course, this is perfect for the spiritual leader who is basically a dictator of Islam, and keeping folks in the dark makes for ease in controlling the masses. It makes one wonder whether some of this is on purpose. If you look at the peaceful Islamic nations, you will see the opposite. Most people are well informed and have access to technology. But one point to know is that Muslim extremists still survive in these countries and are actively funding terrorist organizations. This religious war by Islam is a continuous threat to human society. In addition, many organizations, both for profit and non-profit, aimed at serving Muslims may have individuals with extremist views posing as peaceful but potentially steering leaders toward Islamic dominance. While these non-profit groups state there is no interaction with the extremists, that is a lie. There is no way to separate extremists from the peaceful ones in a lot of these groups, and that is a concern for our national security. If you can't see the writing on the wall, you have your head in the sand. It amazes me that our media never talks the truth about Islam for fear of offending someone in our current woke country. Being woke will lead to the destruction of this country, and we cannot let that happen. Cair continues to grow and expand during this time and increases its push to stop hate crimes, travel bans, and surveillance, which, in my mind, is protecting the extremists by allowing them to move around freely. Cair eventually becomes the ACLU for Muslims, which allows them to protect the extremists within our country. But then the ACLU does the same thing many times over, acting as lawyers for illegals. This is a continuing problem that comes from being a freedom-loving country, and the extremists are taking full advantage of the loopholes to infiltrate. Finally, our government is waking up and at least asking questions about where the money comes from and who it goes to. But the battle is brutal. The progressives are protecting all Muslims, including the terrorists, and that is a major national defense concern. We need to open our eyes to the truth to solve this issue. A recent event is very concerning, and that is Muslims trying to create a major city in Texas with a mosque and all the trimmings of Islam, including the blasting of daily prayer calls with Muslims in the streets praying. Although this group says the city is open to anyone, we all know the truth. This is just a facade to get their community where they can practice Sharia law, which is another story. Once they have the city, they elect all Muslims to run the town, and there goes any following of our culture. In response to this effort, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is doing what Trump needs to do, and that is to designate Cair as a foreign, transnational terrorist and criminal organization. This move by Abbott is because he knows what is under the covers with this organization. This fight is still ongoing, and we will have to wait for the final results to know the outcome. Of course, Cair turns around and sues Texas, and with our current justice system filled with progressive nutjobs who will probably side with the extremists. Our justice system is failing all of us and needs fixing. You should now have a basic understanding of the Muslim nonprofit group Cair, along with the controversies about potentially funding Islamic terrorists. This group is like the Black Lives Matter group of the past, with questionable funding and expenditures. It is the same with Cair, and I have no doubt they are funding Islamic extremists. Here's a recent example from the New York Post. These people whom Cair is funding are Islamic Hamas supporting extremists, and this is totally not appropriate. Cair does a lot of good things for Muslims, and it is to be commended for its work. But funding Islamic extremists is wrong. But here is the key that people miss. Cair, and most Muslims do not see extremists as we do. They see them as Muslims doing Allah's work, terrorist or not. Sad but true. There is so much more information on Cair and the Muslim Brotherhood, so do your own research and don't be a lemming. The media ignores any negatives about these groups as part of the progressives' woke agenda, and that is impacting our country because people are not informed. But that is precisely how progressives work, using censorship as a strategy, as we have observed over the past 10 years. One last thing I've said many times before, Do not put all Muslims in the same bucket, because we have peaceful Muslims that only want to live free and follow their religion without any violence or intimidation of others. But on the other hand, many are extremists, but stay silent until called by a religious leader or event, as we watched all the protests supporting Hamas with unlimited funding from the Middle East. Cair is a national security concern that we cannot ignore. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned a bit about the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which is doing good things for Muslims, but it is on the borderline whether they support extremists or not. The question is whether it is on purpose or just an unintentional fallout from being a non-profit with lots of Muslims working for the group. That wraps this up. Signing off, Charlie.